Hi everyone, so this is YMP TV on episode 6, and we have Steve Jong, CEO of VRIFY and Chairman of Integra Resources, and a YMP award winner. So nice to see you again, Steve. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you as well. Thanks for having me.
So I'm pretty excited about doing this interview today, not only because you're a past YMP award winner, but also because it's a lot about technology, how it's like shaping and disrupting our industry. So I think it's going to be a very interesting talk. And the way I'm going to do it is a bit of a timeline of your career. So we'll start from the beginning in 2008 when you joined the mining industry, which a lot of people will remember how bad it was. It was a difficult time, so we'll say it that way. So for those entering the market and starting their career now, what advice would you give to them?
Ignorance is bliss. I think when I started in 08, I would have been, I guess, 25 years old at the time. I didn't fully appreciate everything that was going on in the world with sort of the global financial crisis, and I was kind of just at that point entering the sort of the professional part of my career. And I came into the mining industry. I was photocopying brochures and kind of doing IR work and other things like that, and I didn't have a bunch of money invested in the stock markets and retirement savings and all of those things. So it was actually on that side of it, I didn't really know what was going on. The companies that I was working for at the time were well funded and able to go through it. And kind of by the time 09 came around and the commodity rally really started to pick up. It's by that time, as I started to appreciate everything that was going on in the world and how the financial markets and the stock markets worked and everything, things had already kind of turned around. I found that the toughest part of my entire career was kind of 2011, 2012, when the gold market rolled over. I'd stepped into a gold seat of running a gold company. And from 2012 to essentially almost, I'd say 6-12 months ago, it's been that has been the real tough market, much more for kind of those of us directly in the sector than kind of 08, 09 and everything that happened then.
So speaking of 2012, you were 28 at that time, and you were appointed CEO of Integra Gold, which was at the time a Quebec-focused junior exploration company. And looking back at the time, what do you think were the key elements that allowed you to become a CEO at such a young age?
So the group of companies that I had started in the industry in 08, there was about 9 of them, and it was sort of all 9 companies sharing an office, sharing resources, but within that you had a real lack of focus on any one individual company. So and it was 2010, late 2010, 2011, I became the CEO of one of these companies, and it was just the interim CEO because they needed somebody to take it on. And it had like a $3 million market cap, and it was a nickel and iron explorer. And at the same time, I became a director of Integra Gold. And my dad, who doesn't have a mining background either, he's a retired RCMP officer, kind of retired getting into the sector. He was actually the CEO of Integra Gold. And so we worked really closely together as we were trying to figure out how we run these companies with our collective sort of 6 years of industry experience. And in 2011, 2012, as Integra Gold and really the gold market just continued to go and go and go. As we were kind of running these 2 companies, we looked at it and said, well, Integra Gold is one that seems to be getting traction. It was still only about a $12 million market cap at the time in 2012. So we came up with the plan to let's find another CEO and I would take on the CEO spot of Integra Gold. So it was really leveraging off literally the year of executive experience I had and sort of the 2 or 3 years of industry experience on that. But at the same time, it was a $12 million company with a sort of $2-3 million a year budget in at the time, 2011, 2012, just an absolute raging gold market. So I guess in summary, trial by fire, but there was a lot of things going kind of in my direction at that time. Where you could put a press release that had the word gold and drill in it, and your stock was probably going to go up 20% regardless of what happened.
And then jumping to September 2015, Integra Gold kicked off a crowdsourcing competition called the Gold Rush Challenge. Can you tell us a bit more about what it was, the idea behind it, and whether you think there should be more of those competitions nowadays?
So from 2012, what I didn't know when I became the CEO is I literally came in, and 2 weeks later, the price of gold hit its high, and that was it. The market rolled over, and we were settling in for sort of the nuclear winter of kind of the gold market. So by 2015, we had fortunately the small high grade discovery we had was getting bigger by the day. It was in Quebec, so it was much easier to finance. It was close to infrastructure. So our company grew at that time from 2012 to 2015, probably from say $10 million to about 80, maybe 80 to $100 million. So we had one of the largest exploration programs literally on the planet at the time. I think we had 12 drill rigs going. A lot of that just because of Quebec flow through and access to the Quebec capital, which I can't say enough good things about. So at that time, we were out there sort of being aggressive, big drill program. We made an acquisition of this a big site next door, and with it came this big data set. And we looked at that and said, well, this data set is from a mine that produced 10 million ounces, or two mines that produced 10 million ounces historically. It seems like such a waste, even though we just bought this company for the mill and for the infrastructure. It seems like such a waste to not kind of look, kind of dig into this data set and look at all the historic results and see if there's something left. But our exploration team at the time was running a 12 drill rig program. They didn't have time to go play around with kind of old files and boxes and so on. And in 2015, which is kind of the bottom of the gold market, even though it sort of bounced along the bottom for the next few years after that, there was a lot of excess kind of capacity out there with geoscientists and just people who weren't working at their full capacity. So that's where we came up with this concept. Well, we have the financial means to do this right now. And kind of when we look at the time value of what a discovery would look like if we made it on this new acquisition we made, we can either wait until our team is at a point where they have time to do it, or we could put up some money and pay the world to essentially dig into it now. So we put $1 million prize up, and we said anyone can look at this data, we'll make it all public. We spent almost $1 million just digitizing it and kind of compiling that data so it was in a format that we could share with the world. And then we put it out there, and it was incredible. We had 1,800 people from 90 countries kind of digging through that data, kind of giving us various submissions. Then we had a team of 5 PhD independent geologists and geoscientists review those submissions. When we finally got it down to a point to review those submissions and say, well, kind of here is this team used machine learning, this team used traditional geology, this team used both, so on, kind of went through all of that and gave us our top 5 submissions. I personally think there should be more of that. You're seeing organizations like Unearthed in Australia and a few others kind of start to really push that. They do an absolute incredible job in kind of bringing collaboration and innovation all together. But I think it's how you've seen many other industries kind of really accelerate their innovation and adopting of new technologies is by kind of that crowdsourcing collaborative approach to technology and data.
And I guess, like, still on the topic of innovation, a year later after the Gold Challenge competition, you co-hosted with Goldcorp the Disrupt Mining, which at the time was not based on one specific data set, but instead was created a platform for potentially disruptive technology in the industry. Can you tell us a bit more about this competition, how it has disrupted or shaking the industry?
So Goldcorp was such a phenomenal partner because they actually, if you go back sort of 15, I guess it would have been 15 years at the time, they did the Goldcorp Challenge, which was quite similar. It was kind of a Rob McEwen concept, and they took a lot of the Red Lake data, made it public, and there's some people like sorry, I'm running a blank on his name right now. But a few of the people that came from that, it's sort of, that was the jumping point for their careers. Mark O'Day is who I was thinking of. Just different people who participated and were finalists within that challenge. So when we did the Integra Gold Rush Challenge, there was a lot of things that we took from that. But the one thing we added to it was we added at PDAC that year, we added this finale event where we had just a big gala. There was 600 people invited, and we sold tables to it. And we let the 5 finalists get up on stage and sort of in the Shark Tank style format, they had to pitch their ideas to a panel of 5 kind of big industry names. And 80% of their mark came from the work that had been done by the geologist ahead of time. And then the final 20% was their ability to pitch it at the end. But through that event, we ultimately raised $250,000 for charity, which we gave back to the local community in Val-d'Or as well. But fast forward a year later, and we're sitting there, and kind of now we're looking at ourselves as kind of we like to innovate. We had a very positive experience of doing that. We like throwing big parties, kind of raising money for charity, but we don't have another data set to use. We can't just do Integra Gold Rush Challenge 2. So that's where a conversation with Goldcorp started and turned into the Disrupt Mining. And similar concept, but instead of using one data set, let's just kind of put industry problems out there and then use Goldcorp. They kind of backstopped the financing for that. Let's use kind of their financial strength and just the brand awareness that comes along with Goldcorp and promote that to essentially anybody who has any sort of technology that may or may not have a disruptive or meaningful impact on how we mine, how we reclaim, how we explore, how we do all of that right across the sector.
And then moving on to 2017, Integra Gold was sold to Eldorado Gold for close to $600 million. When you joined the company in 2012, we know the price of gold had highs, like peaked at highs of 1900, and then the sectors entered into a 3-year down cycle where we saw some reduction in financing and investors fleeing. How did you manage to go through that period and then sell the company for such value?
So it's as much as I would love to take credit for it, first and foremost, the team we had, like I was the CEO, George Salamis was the executive chairman, and Hervé Thibodeau was our VP of exploration or senior VP. And kind of we really, like the way we approached it, it was very much a collaborative team mentality that we took to this company. So any success is kind of has to be spread across not just that smaller inner team, but just the team in general. Like to go from in a gold price environment that went from, I think it was 1800 or so to it would have been maybe 1250, maybe a little bit higher, 1350 when we ultimately sold the company. And to go from that 10 million to $600 million sale, it kind of, when I look at that, or if you just use numbers like that, it looks really simple. But when it really comes down to it, aside from just the team, we had an absolutely incredible deposit. In 2012, we had 100,000 ounces of gold. And in 2017, we had close to 3 million of high-grade gold that was near surface, sitting literally 2 kilometers away from a bankrupt mill that we bought in a mining community. So I'd like to say that kind of here's the roadmap and here's what we'll do it again. If you can find a 100,000 ounce deposit and it turns out it's 3 million ounces, you're probably going to realize some level of success. And that is, to me, is exploration success. And what was the factor? I cannot say that when I was 28 years old, I looked at this deposit and said, I really see something here. I think it's going to be 3 million ounces of high grade gold. I'd be lying if I said I saw that opportunity. A lot of things that I sort of envisioned for Integra Gold in 2012 just never panned out as far as the gold market and how other things would go. Fortunately, we just had an absolutely incredible deposit.
And then in 2017, you co-founded VRIFY, which uses virtual reality technology to reinvent the way the information is presented to investors, stakeholders, or anyone who's interested in learning more about a company's project. Can you walk us through what VRIFY does?
So VRIFY is a concept that George and I started back in 2016 at Integra Gold, where we were chartering planes to bring people on site, looking at this, and that we'd spend $50,000 on a plane charter and do a big site visit. And our project was located 3 kilometers from an airport and an hour's flight from Toronto. So it was quite easy for us to do site visits compared to a lot. And we looked at that and we said, well, we have thousands and thousands of investors and we like thousands and thousands more investors. Why are we just limiting it to this sort of anywhere from 10 to 40 people we can bring on site at any given time? So it was actually the CBC Olympics app from the Rio Olympics that we kind of saw the first time I saw 360-degree photography where you could go and stand on the track field and move your phone and look around. And we kind of saw that and said, why don't we create something like this for our site? So we created this virtual site visit. And what we found was kind of stumbled on it. Like we spent a lot of our lives on the road marketing. just kind of 2-3 weeks a month with investors, with analysts, with bankers. And then when we went through the sales process, it was a very competitive process. So there's kind of 10, 12 different groups we were talking through. And what we found is we'd go into these meetings and we'd have an iPad with this virtual tour of our site, and we'd also have our PowerPoint deck, and we were all of a sudden spending 80% of our time kind of taking people through just the site and explaining to it as we go, and we'd hide a couple PDFs within that we could open up. And by the end of it, and this is only about a 6-month period, because then we went through the sales process and our company was gone, but by the end of it, we kind of realized the way that we're presenting information today, to just take everything that we do and try to stick it into a piece of paper or a 2-dimensional PowerPoint, it's not enough. Like, people were just naturally gravitating toward these virtual representations of sites that we'd created. So we started VRIFY, and the concept was quite simply, we're going to create a product that is going to completely reinvent how mining companies communicate themselves, and the other side of that is how investors kind of view mining companies. And VRIFY started so after we sold Integra Gold, I became the CEO of VRIFY. George became the CEO of a new company, which we called Integra Resources. So I'm on the board of that. George is on the board of VRIFY. So we still work closely together, but we're kind of both involved in both parts of it. And VRIFY in 2018 would have had 4 companies that were using it. Goldcorp was one of the first to adopt, which really helped as well. Now there's about 125. So it's growing by the day, and it's moved away from just a virtual site visit, and it's much more of an interactive presentation. So if I was to present to you, if we're in a one-on-one meeting, I'd come in, I'd put 2 iPads out, and then I would take my PowerPoint, but have integrated within that 3D models, photography, and all kinds of other interactive content. Or if you're remote, like the environment we're in today, I'll just send you a link and I'll grab control of a 3D model and an interactive presentation and kind of walk you through that remotely. So it's interesting being in this COVID environment where the remote work from home virtual aspect of it, because VRIFY's business is very much built on the concept that we are spending way too much time kind of traveling around the world to meet with people, when a lot of we could have much more engaging, compelling, effective presentations remotely regardless. So as kind of it's a weird spot to be in as we all work remote, and we're trying to understand sort of the impacts on our business and the future impacts of our business. But our VRIFY's business within this environment is kind of growing quicker than it ever has before.
I mean, I think you're jumping ahead of my next question, but but that's pretty good. I mean, it's a good transition to. So do you think the current crisis with COVID-19 will increase the appeal and the demand for technology in the industry?
So I guess my own views on COVID, like COVID will pass eventually. And whether it's through a vaccine or we're able to just get a handle of it. But I think what's happening right now, and this is not just mining, I think what's happening is everybody is kind of realizing that working from home and working virtually and doing these meetings virtually isn't sort of how we pictured it was. And like for me, working for a tech company with 35 sort of tech employees who work from home sometimes and have a developer background and so on, I've been blown away personally just how kind of the tools like the Zooms and the Microsoft Teams and the Google Hangouts and how all these different interactive collaborative tools, how effective they actually are. And I think I think the results of all this, first, I think it's going to be like at least a year plus before people are really comfortable to jump back into an airplane in an airport and go through that. But regardless of that, I think there's a realization that like, hey, wait a second, we can do a lot of this work that we do day to day in a remote environment. And whether you still have your office and you're just doing your meetings to your people in other cities remotely, or you've actually transitioned to more of a work from home, I can say as a business owner, like we are definitely rethinking how we structure our own business. We have an office, we have a company with 35 people and we have 32 desks. So we've been looking at more office space, but now kind of watching how this is all unfolded, we might transition to a shared desk space where you work from home two to 3 days a week and you actually share your desk with somebody else. And you can essentially double the capacity of your office because people are just using shared workspaces. So I think, who knows, like our business, VRIFY, continues to grow. And it's sort of been accelerated through this COVID environment. But I think just that the world in general is going to change how kind of work takes place and how people integrate. And I'll be honest, I have 3 little kids at home. and to be able to spend this much more time at home and to be finish your workday and walk into the next room and be able to start that part of your life, it's really nice.
I agree. And do you think technology can be the answer to connect to millennials or the Generation Z in terms of interesting them in either working or investing in mining?
I think investing. I think investing for sure. Um, like I think if we continue to use, so everybody's attention span, not just millennials, everyone in the world's attention span is shrinking every day because we're now used to sort of just skimming news and Instagram and Facebook, and that we're all looking for that instant gratification. So I think we're kind of naive to think that a 30-page PowerPoint is ever going to kind of will continue to work in the future. And that's not a millennial thing. That's sort of, my parents skim news the same way now as well. So I think technology, yes, for sure. But I think the mining sector as a whole, I think technology, with technology comes transparency and accountability. And you look at any sort of marketplace, and kind of investing is no different. Like with any marketplace, like Airbnb or any Uber or anything like that, with any marketplace that's been created as a result of technology, you now have rating systems and this accountability factor that doesn't really exist in investment sector today. I think that's going to be really important for millennials going forward. Is we all talk about the ESG aspect, and a lot of these big funds, as the people putting money into these funds, it becomes more important to them, and obviously it's becoming more important to funds, the ESG component. I think that's only going to be a growing aspect, and that one specifically to the younger generation, I think is more and more important. They want to ensure that the money they're putting into is not sort of destroying communities and the environment and so on. And I think technology can play a really positive role in helping communicate that everything the mining sector does isn't bad and evil. We may not do the best job of communicating it, but I think those of us sort of in the sector, we have seen the benefits of what mining can actually, the impact of that mining can have in a community. And I think back to the $250,000 we raised for local communities in Val d'Or, and that's a mining community that was really suffering, kind of, I shouldn't say suffering, but was definitely feeling it in the downturn in the industry. And as we're standing there kind of giving out $10,000 and $20,000 checks to various groups within this community, people are literally just, they're crying because it's such a kind of meaningful, it will have such a meaningful impact on whether it's a charity or whatever group, what they're trying to achieve. So sorry, I'm kind of giving you a long-worded answer to this, but I do think that technology is going to play a massive role in kind of educating not just millennials, but just the world on the benefits of the mining sector. And hopefully at the same time can maybe put a bit of a spotlight on the bad actors in the sector and make their kind of existence that much harder as well.
And then speaking of technology, what's next for VRIFY?
So we'll continue to grow. VRIFY has spent, like when I talk about our business and how we initially envisioned it, like we've grown and we now have 125 clients, and it's growing almost on a daily basis now. But what VRIFY is missing is if you sign up for VRIFY today, you're essentially using us as an interactive presentation tool. So it's PowerPoint with some 3D modeling and some other aspects. So where we're building our business and what's happening with VRIFY is we're starting to kind of spend more and more time on the buy side, the investor side of the equation. So the way we envision a company that joins VRIFY 3-6 months from now, not only are you getting these great tools that are going to help you better communicate your story, you're going to get access to the VRIFY community, which we're going to do everything we can to build into the most influential mining, kind of be it institutional or retail investors on the planet. And that's how we think we're really going to be able to create value, not just give you a mining company a tool that you have to go out and find investors with, but say, here's our tool, here's how to use it, and here's investors that we've actually trained on how to kind of interpret information this way as well. And that's what we're really working toward, is just building that entire ecosystem, not just a one-way tool. So what's next for us is just focusing on that investor side of the equation.
And before I end this interview, is there anything else you would like to tell our members or our viewers?
No, I think that's it. The only thing I'd say is stay safe out there.
Wash your hands.
I think we all have to do our part with social distancing, and I think especially in Canada here, like if we see we've had our ups and downs, but I think just the way things are trending right now, I'm pretty proud of the way that kind of we've handled this entire situation. And I know there's lots of criticisms and how different kind of jurisdictions and politicians and everyone have done it, but I think going through a time like this and looking at how everything else is unfolding in the world, I think this is a phenomenal time to be a Canadian, be where we live, and I think I'm confident that things will bounce back, and especially in the mining sector, people are always going to need those materials and so on. But yeah, my only message to everyone would be just continue the social distancing and just stay safe.
Thank you, Steve, for this great interview. I think it was a great talk. And we usually, I know I say this to all of our speakers now, but we usually give a token of appreciation to our speakers to thank them for doing like a speak or anything. But we have decided instead to do a donation through our mining care initiative, like as YMP association. So we'll give funds to United Ways Greater Toronto to provide assistance to those in need during this COVID-19 crisis. So I'll put up a link for our viewers and to get more information. Again, Steve, thank you very much. It was a great interview.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Stay safe.
You too.